good stuff. So let's welcome her into the studio. Good morning, or remotely actually. And are you at the office this morning?
I am. Yup.
That's cool. And what's really unique, and I like we can see a little bit of that flavor in behind you, is the State Farm colors. Your offices have that scheme all over it, right?
Yep, we like our bright red walls for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for today's segment. You are filling in for Aaron Doan. He is somewhere. Is he in a jungle somewhere with like a machete going through trails? What's the deal there?
Maybe, I don't know. He's off grid for a few weeks. That's all we know. So him and his wife got away for a little bit, and so that's the extent. We got no contact. So
All right, that's an okay thing. Well, thanks for joining us this morning. Our topic today is going to be families and life insurance in general. And sometimes there are some, I guess, some assumptions that are out there. There are some things that we think, we don't need that, or we do need that, and maybe we don't. Where do you want to start today when it comes to
Mhm.
this? And I know a good part of it is going to be about stay-at-home parents too, and do they kind of reflect or mirror what those that are out there maybe working at the plant, or blue collar or white collar worker, and the differences there. So let's start and take us through a little bit of your thoughts this morning, if you don't mind.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, honestly, to frame the conversation well, I was just going to really plug into for my life personally. I'm married. I got four kiddos. And my husband, for the longest time, was our primary breadwinner. I've been with Aaron for 4 years, but before that, I worked part time. We relied mostly on his income. And so initially, we just took out a nice life insurance policy for him, knowing that I lose his income. I need something to pay off our mortgage, to provide for our kids. And I feel like that is the mentality of a lot of people. Like you have the primary source of your income, you want to protect that, and that's good, that's responsible. For a lot of husbands, they want to make sure their wife's taken care of. Not that that's bad, definitely a
Mhm.
starting point, but we tend to stop there. Um,
And,
so, mhm,
but when we stop there, is that
mhm,
do you think from, and I know I'm getting a little ahead of us a little bit, but when we have those presumptions and we get to a certain point, um, are we still safe, or do you find that you are having those conversations with those couples and saying, if something happens today or tomorrow, uh, you are not going to be ready. Like, how
mhm.
far do we get in preparation to where then you have to step in and say, hey, we've got to go even further?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. So I think a lot of people, they don't like to think about worst case scenario,
Mhm.
right? Aaron's
Yeah.
one of Aaron's favorite lines is that sometimes you got to make people bleed. You gotta really get in there and be like, okay, what happens if your wife does pass away? Like, yes, like other than the emotional side of it, like physically, how are you taking care of your family when you consider the things that that stay-at-home parent does, or the one that has the lower income? Maybe they're not paying the mortgage, but they're providing childcare, right? So what happens to your kiddos now after school? You're having to pay for somebody to watch them. Who's cleaning your house? Do you have time to do that? Do you want to make time for that while your kids are grieving? Or do you want to be able to hire somebody to come take care of your home for you? Um, there's little things like that that I think get really overlooked, especially when you're considering a part-time parent or a stay-at-home parent, that their value is definitely less when you look at that idea of life insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Heather Bush from Aaron Doan State Farm Insurance. Aaron pitching in for Aaron, Heather pitching in for Aaron this morning. But really, Heather, the team there at Aaron Doan State Farm Insurance, you have to be very well versed in all of these insurance policies, all of these kind of conversations, even when it's difficult conversations like the ones that we're talking about today. Because, I'm in my mid 40s, and life insurance doesn't necessarily, it's not. on my radar. How do
Mhm.
you convince people to put it on their radar?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're not alone. There's a lot of people that, um, especially right now where I know budgets are tight, things are crazy expensive. I'm trying to feed 4 kiddos, and it's amazing to me how much even girls can eat. Um, but like making that priority to put into a future need, because it is going to be a need. If you think about it, everybody's going to die. As terrible as it is to have to think about, your time is coming. And so, how is your family? How are the people who are going to be responsible for your estate? What are they doing? They have to pay for a funeral. They have to pay to somehow take care of your remains. Like, there are final expenses that are going to be incurred no matter who you are. And that burden falls to somebody, somebody within your sphere. And so, even if it's just small policies, um, we talk to parents who hate the idea of taking a life insurance policy out on their kids. Like, oh my gosh, that's so morbid. I don't even want to think about that. Reality, unfortunately, tragedies happen. And we want to make sure parents are prepared because you're going to have funeral costs and you're not going to want to have to think about how am I going to pay for this? You're going to be grieving, you're going to be dealing with so much other stuff. Have something in place to where you're prepared for that.
Heather, does, and I say this, I think I already know the answer, but does it happen? Does it happen where um, they don't have enough insurance? They don't have the right insurance. Um, what are those conversations like? And we don't want to go too deep on that because it's tragedy that happens.
Mhm.
It's something that is heartbreaking for families. But how realistic is this that a portion of the population out there is not ready, and then something happens, and you have to have, I guess, the post conversation with them, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talked to plenty of parents, or sorry, of kids whose parents have passed away. So I'm in my mid 30s, and um, I find out that my dad has passed away. So I'm then, as his daughter, responsible for figuring that out, right? And I find out he doesn't have life insurance. So
Yeah.
now I'm in a position where I'm trying to keep my family of four afloat.
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden, I have a $12,000 funeral expense because funerals are expensive. Even if
Yeah.
you're getting cremated, you're still talking 7 or 8 thousand.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
something there that how am I going to pay for that? Right. And so thankfully for me, I mean, my parents are still living and I know that they have something in place. They have made a point to say, I don't want that financial burden for you. And that's the same no matter your age, no matter where you're at. Like you have loved ones and you don't want that burden on them. And so that's where we really encourage people to make the budget space to provide that for your loved ones.
And I want to follow up on that scenario in just a moment, but I don't want to forget asking this question, which is how much of a budget? How much should we budget for this? I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
everybody's situation is different, but is
Mhm.
there a range at least from an expectation standpoint?
Yeah, we definitely, I mean, I believe it's around 5% of your annual income you're going to put towards insurance. So there's a lot of different factors. We have some great tools that allow us to be like, okay, you have this income you need to replace. You have this for final expenses. I want to provide for my kids' future, so I want to make sure each of them gets 100,000 to go to college if anything happens to me. I want to make sure that, XYZ debt is covered for my spouse. So we have tools that help us really shape what that amount is. But in general, you're looking at about a 5% of your budget should go to your insurance costs.
Okay, good information there. Going back to that scenario, and for our listeners, if you're just joining us, we're talking with Heather Bush from Erin Doan State Farm Insurance this morning about life insurance in general, which I think is a good topic of conversation. And I think we're only going to be able to scratch the surface in regards to this, and that's where your team is in place to be able to, that baton can be handed off there. But where do you think that the conversation can start? Is it the kids or the adult kids, I guess, in most cases, with the parent, or do you think that a lot of that responsibility should land on the parent? Where do you see from the insurance agent standpoint?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest answer is the parent. I mean, you yourself should have that responsibility in place for sure. Like, I think that's just something that, as we're talking about your financial situation and your budget, you should account for that.
Mhm.
But as a child, as somebody who has parents that are maybe getting older, um, I would want to ask that question. Have that conversation with your parents of what is your plan when something happens to you? Um, you can take a life insurance policy out on your parents if they can't afford it, but you want to plan ahead enough to know that you have something there. So, I mean, that's definitely something that we've done. We've had a group of siblings who are like, okay, we need a final expense policy for mom. So the three of them own it together, they pay on it. So when something happens to mom, they know that they will have the funeral costs covered.
I never thought about that, but uh, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you could take one out for your kids, but
Mhm.
you can take one out for your parents. Do you
Yep,
think
you
many
can.
people know that?
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely one of those things where you have to have their permission. You can't take life insurance
Yeah.
policies out on whoever you want. You have
Yeah.
to have a reason. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a less known way to do it. So it's something where you can be prepared if mom or dad are like, yeah, I'm not paying for that. You can prepare yourself for it.
Huh. Interesting. What before we wrap up this morning, and I want to talk as well. Our second side of that topic is stay-at-home parents. We want to dive into that as well. But before we get into that transition, what are some of maybe the top two or three things that we perceive when it comes to life insurance in general, which is not reality? Is there anything that you kind of chuckle at a little bit, I guess, or you hear somebody walks in and they say this, and it's just not right.
Mhm. Yeah, so I would say two of our biggest misconceptions is one, that it's not affordable. Um, for the average 20, 30-year-old to get a pretty solid life insurance policy, you're talking $20 a month. So, I mean, you can get into something really easy and you don't have to go like, I need a $500,000 to provide for my family. I mean, you can start small. Start small, $20 a month, build into it. Um, and I think that that's commonly we make it way more complicated than it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you fill out a form, answer some health questions, and you pay $20, and you can have coverage for your family. And I think that we tend to way overcomplicate stuff like that.
All right. Good information there. One more misconception that comes to mind that you can think of. Obviously the cost that's a huge one because that
Yeah.
especially I always think about this is that as we get older, and maybe this is correct, I don't know, but as we get older, does it actually get more expensive or even
Mhm.
not even affordable? Is that a
Yeah.
misconception or is that reality?
Nope, that's definitely reality. The younger you are, the more affordable it is. As you age, obviously your risk gets higher, so your rates get higher. I think one of the other huge misconceptions is that there's no living benefit for it. So it's something that I'm paying this 20, $30 a month for somebody else. I don't have a
Yeah.
benefit for it.
Yeah.
But there is ways that you can set it up so there's living benefits. There are, when you talk permanent life insurance, it's building cash value. You have the ability to take loans out on your life insurance. Um, you can, for me, I have life insurance policies on my kids. Their whole life policies, they're building cash value. So I know when they're in their 30s and they're ready to start a family, buy their first home, they can actually take a loan out on those life insurance policies. They can take cash out of them. You can just pull 5,000 in cash potentially out of there because that's built up. It's a savings account basically that has the benefit of the life insurance in it. And so there's that living benefit side of it that is not well known, I feel like, when you're talking about this end of life coverage.
It's good information to know. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think it's going to be a starting point for many people out there to be able to say, maybe this is something we should have a conversation about. And
Mhm.
we hear it, we see it in the commercials out there. Do you have life insurance? No, I've been thinking about it, so on and so forth. And maybe it's time to stop thinking about it and actually have that especially if if you're it's and we're not keeping your feet to the fire, but like 20 bucks, that's not bad. I mean, it could be a range, it could be higher, it could be lower, or wherever. But and obviously everybody's situation is different, but at least having that conversation, I think, is important. uh Stay-at-home parents, um I would assume that this is a different kind of conversation because uh maybe their lifestyle is a little different, or what they do. But is there much difference when it comes to life insurance from somebody that travels to work and is in a different environment versus stay at home with the family?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, we like really concrete, straightforward answers, right? So I'm the breadwinner. I make 50,000 a year. I want income replacement for my family for 5 years. Great.
Mhm.
$250,000 life insurance policy. Have 100,000 on your home, you're talking 350. So it's a really easy number to come up with, right? And the need is there because my husband doesn't work. Therefore, straightforward, I need it on myself. When you start talking about more that stay-at-home parent side of it, you're getting a little more or a little less concrete, right? So, what is their true value when you're considering um, if they're not around, right?
Okay.
So, I'm not missing their income. It's not an income replacement side of it, but what are all of the things that you do,
Hmm.
right? So,
Good
I
information. Yeah.
I have a friend who she's a stay-at-home mom. She homeschools. I mean, they live on a little hobby farm, so she takes care of their chickens and she cleans her house, right? And her husband works like 60, 70 hours a week. So
Mhm.
if she passes away, what does he do,
Hmm.
right? So you're now talking childcare, somebody to take care of the home. Your kiddos now need schooling. I mean, she was their teacher as well. And so you have all these factors now that, while it's not as clear cut what that amount is, the need is still there just the
Yeah.
same.
I have never thought about that, but that's probably more, especially since COVID and more people are staying at home. I think that's a big reality today, and putting that value on what that other person, that significant other, does in regards to anything that becomes, and I use the word burden, but it makes sense that that's going to transfer over to you, right? That's going to be on
Mhm.
your shoulders to, okay, how do I handle that? How do I handle that expense, but also being able to do that? Because most people aren't then quitting their job and not taking their income in to
Mhm.
go to stay at home at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, what a blessing if you lose your spouse that you can take 2 years, a year off of work and just be there for your kiddos, help them
Mhm.
to reacclimate without mom around. That's such a blessing if you're able to do that. And so setting your family up well to be in that position.
Good information this morning. I like this conversation, the details about just, scratching the surface and going a little bit even deeper than that, so that those that are listening or viewing this can have that conversation. And maybe it starts at home. I mean, obviously, that's something where you want to discuss it with your spouse, with your partner. But a lot of that can be cleared up, even a lot of those questions that are unknowns with answers, by visiting your team there at Erin Doan State Farm Insurance. Take us through times that they can stop in, or phone number information like that. Would you do that for us this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you can pop into our office anytime, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. We're just east of Meyer on US 10. We've got three fully licensed people who are able to sit down with you at any given time to look at it. If you want to give us a call for set up an appointment, phone number is 231-757-3115. we can set up appointments same day. So the benefit of having three licensed people that are willing to sit down and talk through is that we usually have somebody available. So if you got your little bee in your bonnet and you're ready to take care of that, we're here to help you. We don't want you to have to put it off any further.
Yeah, that's good information. And hopefully somebody out there will be able to do that and start that conversation today and be able to reach out to you. Heather, I appreciate you taking the time with us this morning. It's certainly a topic that we don't necessarily discuss every day, but it's a topic that we should be discussing. And it sounds like at any age, right? This isn't
Mhm.
like, hey, you got to go to the doctor to get yourself checked out at this age and so on and so forth. Anything can happen at any time, and that's where having that conversation and having that policy in place is important.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, Heather, thanks for taking the time with us this morning. We appreciate that.
Yeah, my
And
pleasure.
yeah, absolutely. And make sure Aaron knows that, I think you should just fill in for him going forward. We're
I
gonna
don't know.
progress.
I told him he was going to owe me a coffee or something for making me do this. So,
Absolutely. No, I think that's great. Oh, one thing that he and I have talked about on the air, which I think is pretty spectacular, is when your office does celebrate those holidays, those food holidays and different holidays there at the office. That's pretty cool. Great camaraderie there. And I think that kind of lands on your shoulders, right? You usually do that.
yes, yep, as a marketing manager, I get to put together a lot of really fun little events. I get to dress Aaron up in weird little costumes and make him go on air, or
Yeah.
it's March reading month, so he's the man with the yellow hat right now and making his way through the schools. And so it's just a lot of fun getting out,
Yeah.
building up our team. So,
Well, that's great. Well, congratulations on all that you do, and your team is doing great. And you're located right there between Ludington and Scottville, north side of US 10. So for our listeners and viewers, stop in, give them a call. What's that phone number one more time, if you don't mind?
yep, 231-757-3115.
All right. Thanks, Heather, so much for being
Thanks.
with us this morning.